reporting for duty. It's your brother, Nkosana the Prince, and this is my podcast, Conversations with the Native Baby. Welcome, and be aware, the revolution will not be televised, but it will be streamed live.
For their music, for their happiness, for their movies, to talk about boys in the hood. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to be I don't want to be 50 years old at a BET We Shall Overcome Achievement Awards. You know what I'm saying? Not me. You know, I want when they see me, they know that every day when I'm breathing, it's for us to go farther. You know, every time I speak, I want the truth to come out. You know what I'm saying? Every time I speak, I want to shiver. You know, I don't want them to be like, they know what I'm going to say because it's polite. They know what I'm going to say. And even if I get in trouble, you know what I'm saying? Ain't that what we're supposed to do? I'm not saying I'm going to rule the world or I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will change the world, and that's our job.
Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. You should ask who taught you to hate being what God did.
In my opinion, there is a bond, a relationship with gangster rap and gang violence in America. And in my opinion, black people did not invent gangster rap. We invented hip hop, and the potential for what hip hop could do and eventually end up doing was recognized. Once upon a time, someone said, we cannot have another black messiah. Martin killed. Malcolm killed. George killed. Jonathan killed. They made sure we wouldn't have another black messiah. Instead, we got black leaders like Reverend Jesse Jackson and Reverend Al Sharpton and Reverend Minister Farrakhan, who have been eunuchs when it comes to their leadership over the past 30, 40 years. And when they neutralized and flooded the black community with crack cocaine to make sure there was never another black Moses to lead us from Egypt into the promised land, they didn't count on this thing called hip hop. They didn't count on this thing called hip hop. And they knew, and they were right, that the new black messiah post black power movement / post civil rights movement, the new black messiah was hip hop music. And they probably recognized it before we did. And they infiltrated and corrupted hip hop and turned it into gangster rap, and they pushed it. How many of y'all went to see Straight Outta Compton? I refuse to watch it. I refuse to watch that movie. Why? If you don't know, Nkosana the Prince is a professional educator. I love kids. I love young people. I have children, and as a professional educator in America, we are required by the law to report any suspected abuse upon a child. It's called mandatory reporters. If I suspect a child is being physically, mentally, sexually, emotionally abused by anyone, by law, I have to report it to the police authorities. Where does that mentality come from? Snitching. No snitching. This is a black thing. No snitching. Snitches get stitches. Where does that come from? Who thought of that? Does it go back to the plantation? Is it a survival mechanism? Is it a crab in a bucket mentality? Well, like Jay-Z said, well, crabs aren't supposed to be in a bucket anyway. Why are the crabs? Just a crab in a bucket. Yeah, crabs belong in the ocean. And we don't belong here. This is not where we're from naturally. So the way we act is reactionary to our environment. But back to the point, who invented that? That's that gangster mentality, that street mentality, no snitching. Then they talk about that a lot in what? Rap. And in my late 30s, I finally realized what mama was talking about, what auntie was talking about. Why they didn't want us at 10, 11, 12, 13 years old listening to Too Short. Because I see what rap music and the gang street mentality does to young people. When I found out that Tupac Shakur died over a gang fight, man, it broke my heart. And when I found out that it wasn't some LAPD crooked police operation that killed Biggie, that it was a gang shooting in retaliation for another gang shooting, it ruined my childhood, man. Bloods and Crips killed Tupac and Biggie. In my opinion, Tupac had the potential to be the Malcolm X of our generation if he would have lived long enough. Tupac died on 25, and by the way, I remember where Pac died. I remember when Pac died. I remember exactly where I was. Maybe that's how people felt when they heard in their respective generations that Kennedy got killed, or that Marilyn Monroe died, James Dean died. I remember, and in regard to the comparison between Tupac and Malcolm X, don't forget, both of their parents were black nationalist revolutionaries. Do you really, I mean, we all know, okay, Afeni was a Black Panther, but do you really know about Miss Afeni Shakur? Do you know that she was brought up on terrorism charges in New York and acted as her own lawyer? Because later in the song, he says she was addicted to crack cocaine. And by the way, one of the greatest black women leaders, we invented hip-hop. They used gangster rap against us because they knew the power of the genre. It's real hip-hop because you can listen to a Tupac song, Brenda's Got a Baby, Keep Your Head Up, and even the songs where he riding, the more gangster songs, listen to them a cappella and listen to the words. Brenda's Got a Baby is poetry. Pac died at 25. At 25, Malcolm was either A, in the streets as a hustler, drug dealer, pimping. No disrespect. These are his words. Read his autobiography. Watch the movie. You ain't got time to read. Malcolm X, Spike Lee. Or he was already in prison. If Malcolm X would have got gunned down by West Indian Archie, we would have never heard of Malcolm X. Just another dead nigga. When I look at Malcolm, I see a man who wasn't afraid to transform himself when he found flaws in his character or the way he was living or believing. From where Malcolm started to where he ended is a very different place. And a lot of leaders aren't willing to do that. Transform himself so many times. And I'm not just talking about him transforming, changing, improving himself, purifying himself when he became Malcolm X, the leader. I'm talking about in the prison. In the prison, he decided, I don't want to live this life. I want to do something better. To 40, Malcolm died at 40. And I don't like to say what if, but if Malcolm would have lived to 60, just think what he would have done. If Pac would have lived to 40, just think what he would have done. And he was killed over some gang shit that had nothing to do with him. Whose fault is it? It's his own fault, man. It's his own fault. See, the Italians, they glorified it in the movies. The Godfathers, the Goodfellas, the Bronx Tales, the Donnie Brascos. Well, Donnie Brasco really didn't glorify it. I think Donnie Brasco was probably a honest look at how the mob is. But all these other movies, they glorified it. And guess what? So did we. Except we didn't glorify it in the movies so much. We glorified it in what? The gangster rap. And I'll argue that we need an evolution of the Blood and the Crips to legitimate community leaders. Could have been the leader we needed, but he got killed because of gang violence. See, with Pac, we knew Pac so much more because of the movies, because of the interviews, because of the charisma, because of the controversy, the shootings, both sides of it. That right, and they didn't. This man, too, you can't tell me this man wasn't no revolutionary, second generation Black Panther, 2G, BP. second generation Black Panther. This man, Tupac Shakur, shot 2 white police officers because they was harassing a black man. Tell me that is not how the Black Panther Party started? Tupac shot 2 off-duty white police officers because they was unjustly harassing a black man. And the courts ruled it was justified. Tupac wasn't no gangster, so why did he die over a gang fight? He made a bad decision. And that bad decision cost him his life. You see, in my opinion, most people born in these poor neighborhoods which are overrun by gangs, they don't choose that life. They are forced into that life the same way their ancestors on the shores of Africa were forced on those ships. And the ones who survived that treacherous middle passage, they were forced off those ships and forced onto those selling blocks and forced onto those wagons and forced onto those plantations. Our boys and little girls are being forced into this gang culture. It's the music. It's the movies. It's us. It's the system. These gangs aren't going anywhere. They're growing. They're spreading. It used to be a Cali thing. It's everywhere. We got to reform these gangs and make them vehicles of positivity for the community. The OGs got the power to do it. Instead of sending these little young niggas to do crime, shoot each other, and a lot of times they shooting innocent people. In this podcast, on this subject, on purpose, I stayed away from innocent victims because we all coming from the same place to a certain extent. The zip codes and area codes are different. Well, you must have never been locked up in Angola prison because don't get it twisted. They got functioning plantations right now today. Go to some of them prison farms in the South. They are literally plantations. The warden still lives in the big house. We need to carry on tradition, and we need to plant the flame, a flame of light, of good, of knowledge, of education, of wealth, of inheritance. That's what we should be doing as a community. Blood, Crips, Christians, Muslims, rich, poor, uppity Negroes, hood niggas, fraternities, sororities. We all got to sit down at the table like the other races do, meaning the black community. The people who got the money and the resources. All right, the Crips say, hey, we need a football field built in this community down here. We want basketball games because we ain't got nothing else for the kids to do. Most of these kids gang bang because ain't nothing else to do in their neighborhoods, in their communities. This is what we need, you know? We need trade schools in these gang-infested neighborhoods. So the black people from our nation, the black nation, we can call it the Black Nation Movement, where we put our resources together to clean up this blood and Crip and gang violence problem. And I'm not just talking about Bloods and Crips, but I'm using them as an umbrella term for all the gangs. You ain't got to put your flag down, but you got to change what the flag represents. And the black people who made it off the plantation, who tasted freedom, we got to go back and get our brothers because that's what it comes down to.